AP, Computer Science A, Unit 4, Lesson 5. Iteration, nested loops. The objective is to write and trace code which uses nested loops. Let's start. First, let's look at this guy. Take a look at the code segment and figure out what's going to be printed as it runs. Okay. Just pause the video and take a look at it, study it. Now, let's notice that the outer loop starts. And for the outer loop, okay, you set up and you're going to start at 0. That's what I is going to be equal to, and it's going to go until string length, which here happens to be 4. Okay? 0 is less than 4, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to come into here, and j is going to be set to 0. Boom. As long as j is less than 3, we're going to come down here and we're going to print I. Okay, so remember, I is 0, and we're going to print one character. This right here says print character at location I. So since I is 0, and remember it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, it's going to print the first L. Boom. Then it's going to come up here and it's going to increment I, and so I or j is going to become 1. I hasn't changed. I is still 0, so it's going to print another L. And then it's going to increment j to 2, and it's going to print another L. And then when j becomes 3, 3 is not less than 3. So at this point, the inner loop is going to stop, and you are now going to exit that loop, come back up here, and add 1 to I. I becomes 1. Now you're going to come back into this loop, and j is going to be reset to 0. Now it's going to print whatever is at location 1, essentially 3 times. So there's your OOO, and then an OOO, and the PPP. This is actually all printed on one line because notice that it's system.out.print, not print line. There just wasn't enough room to the edge of the screen here to write out the LLL and then the 6 O's and the 3 P's. There are 6 O's because there are 2 O's, so you printed this one 3 times and this one 3 times. Nested loops. They can get a little bit tricky to what happens here? The scope of the loop control variable for the outer loop is everything within that loop. So, including inside the inner loop. That means that we can reference both of our control variables from inside that inner loop and use the outer loop control variable in the header for our inner loop. A common AP exam question might ask, what is the output for a loop like the one below? And again, over here, I've got stuff written down, so we're going to look at it. I'm going to circle things as we get to it and mark out as we don't. So j is set to 4. Fantastic. Let's see if I can actually get something here. So j is set to 4. 4 greater than 0? Absolutely. So then I'm going to come down here. K is set to j. Okay. So k gets the value of 4. Is 4 less than 5? Yes. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to print k. So I'm going to print k. What is k? K is 4. So there's my 4. Then I'm going to add 1 to k because I come up here, k plus plus. So now k is 5. Is 5 less than 5? No. So this loop doesn't execute. I end the loop. I do a print line, and I come down to here. So we're back down to here. Now k is set to 3 because that's what j is. So system.out.print 3. Then we come back up here. Remember, it comes back to here, and we increment from 3 to 4. And k is 4. 4 is less than 5, so we print k. And then we come back up here and we increment, and k is now 5. 5 is not less than 5, so we end the loop and we do a print line. So now our next spot to print will be here if we print again. We go all the way back up, and now j minus minus, instead of being a 3, we're down to 2. So j is 2, k is 5. Now k is set to the value of j. 2 is less than 5, so we're going to print 2. Then we come back up here and we increment by 1, and k is 3. 3 is less than 5, so we print 3. And then we're going to print 4. And then when we get to 5, we're not going to print it because it doesn't satisfy our condition. We drop down, we print a line, and it continues like this. In a lot of these, once you run through 2 or 3 iterations, you should know what's happening, and you should see the pattern. A loop is just going to be a pattern, and you can finish it off. So this is what you would see. Okay? Now, moving on, it's time for some multiple choice question practice. There are 2 multiple choice questions that deal with nested loops in your notes. The first one is here. The second one is also in your notes. Pause the video at this time and try these. Or if you don't have access to your notes because you haven't come to class, you haven't printed them off, whatever, pause the video and do this one, and I'll give you a chance to pause the video so you can try the next one. All right, you think you know what it is? Which one did you pick? A, B, C, D, or E? Yes, the AP exam is going to have 5 different questions or 5 different possibilities. Take a look at this. I is set to 5. 5 is greater than or equal to 1. J is set to I, so J gets set to 5. J is greater than or equal to 1. So we're going to output 2 times J, so that's going to be 10, minus 1 is 9. And then we're also going to concatenate that with a space. So that's where we get 9 and space. Oops, got to find my better mouse for doing this. So that's where we get 9 followed by a space. Then it comes down here, or we're still at this loop because notice this is one little loop here. This is done. We decrement j by 1. So if j was 5, it now becomes 4. Okay, and then we do it again. 2 times 4 is 8, minus 1 is 7. So we're going to put 7 and a space. And then we're going to decrement again, and j is 6, which is still bigger than 1. And we're going to keep on going, so we've got 2 times 6, okay, minus, oops, 2 times 3, which is 6, minus 1 is 5. And then we have a space. We decrement, and now j is 2. 2 times 2 is 4, minus 1 is 3. And then we have a space. And we decrement again, and we get 2. Okay, or we get 1. 2 times 1 is 2, minus 1 is 1. And we have a blank space, which we really can't see printed. And then we decrement j again, and it becomes 0. At this point, this loop is over, and we come back to the outer loop. What happens here? Well, I goes from being 5 to being 4. And now we start all over again, but we start out with j being 4, and we go from there, and we keep on. If you continue this, now notice you first got 97531. You had 97531, 97531, 97531. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. These two didn't match, so you can eliminate those. So then you do the next one, and you take a look at it. And as you work through it, once you move through this next one, and you get 7531, this one, as soon as you put in the first one, 4. 2 times 4 is 8, minus 1 is 7. This eliminates A. Now you're down to B and C. Now this one, you need to run all the way through so that you can verify that it's going to be B and not C, because you're not going to get the -1. You're going to get down to 1, and then it won't run anymore. Okay? For multiple choice questions, as you work through these loops, as soon as you get to this point, this tells you that your answer is B. You don't have to keep going. Remember that these tests are timed. So once you have an answer, stop. Pick your answer and move on. Okay? Again, if you need to run through this again, we'll be happy to do that. Just let me know. Let's try this one. And again, if you don't have your notes with you, pause the video, read through this, trace it, and then select your answer. Okay, do you have an answer? Let's see here. We have X and we have Y. X has the value 0, Y has the value 0. While X is less than 2, yep, Y gets set to 2. Well, okie dokie. While X times Y, 0 times 2 is less than or equal to 2. Okay, we're going to output X space Y space, and we're going to increment Y. And so we come back up here, and now we're going to multiply X times Y. So Y becomes 3. Sorry, didn't leave myself enough room there. 3. But notice 0 times 3 is still 0, which is still less than or equal to 2. So now what am I going to output? I'm going to output 0 space 3. Oh, and then what's going to happen? Y is going to become 4. But here, notice that 0 times anything is always going to be equal to 0. So this will always be true. This can never be false. It doesn't matter what Y is. Since X is 0, it's always going to be true, and therefore you will have an infinite loop. Okay? And again, on your second iteration through, you should notice, whoops, I'm still checking 0. Changing Y did not change the condition. There was no way to change the condition. You might have noticed that the first time through. But again, if you didn't notice it the first time through, the second time through, you immediately should realize this is never, ever going to become true. Okay? And therefore, if it never, or it's always going to be true, it's never going to become false, my bad. And so therefore, you will never exit the loop. You'll never get down here where you're incrementing X. And that concludes Lesson 5, which also concludes Unit 4.